Right, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the first Nextier Power Dialogue in collaboration with the MacArthur Foundation. Today's topic is one that should be of interest to any and every person in the power sector, whether you're an investor or government policy maker or consumer or family members. Everyone should be interested in this topic. Like Emeka said, it's cost-reflective tariff or service delivery, which should come first. We all have an opinion because we all have electricity supplied to our homes, and most of us have generators as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But before we continue, did anyone see an essay from the newspaper Business Day yesterday? I'll read the title for you. It says, "Discourse on Edge over Tesla's entry into the Nigerian power sector." That was really interesting for me because, you know, when I saw it, I wondered for a minute, why would discourse be on edge? The primary fuel for Tesla's Tesla's products is electric power, right? I mean, I'm thinking that, right, this is a new line of clientele for discourse. They should be excited. Then I thought about it a little bit more. I said, oh, is that an indirect way of putting pressure on the disco market for improved service delivery so we don't get embarrassed? Or maybe it's the regulators that the pressure is on, right? So that they actually come up with a tariff that can maximize revenue in this sector. Regardless of what your thought is on this subject, it just tells you the timeliness of the topic for this debate. And so we have to actually talk about it. And more than talk about it, it's time for us to actually come to a resolution on how we should move forward. So I'll start by introducing the panelists. So we have three gentlemen here. I'll start with Emmanuel Katepa. He's the Managing Director of CEC, Copperbelt Electric Corporation. Copperbelt Energy, Africa Investment. And it's actually the parent company to AEDC, the Abuja Electricity Company. So he's a career engineer, manager for over 20 years experience in the power sector, Southern and Western Africa. Before being appointed to this role, he was technical advisor of the company. Prior to this, he headed ECC Renewables in Zambia. He developed small and medium scale renewables. His resume is long and it goes on and on. It just tells you the world of experience he's come with, right? He sits on the boards of the companies in Mauritius, in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, and Zambia. Professionally, he's a member of the Nigeria Society of Engineers, registered under current. He's a fellow of the Engineering Institute in Zambia as well. He holds a Bachelor's of Engineering degree and honors in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Birmingham in the UK. Masters in Engineering in Maintenance, holds a Masters in Business Admin as well from Copperbelt University in Zambia. The next person I'll be introducing is Patrick Ume. Some of you probably know him. He used to be a commissioner with NER in the previous, you left 2015, right? He does have a wide range of experience in the electricity utility industry. So he was appointed commissioner, I was commissioner from December 2010 to 2015. He served as a commissioner for finance and management services. So he was responsible for finance, HR operations. And then I think he transited into rates, competition and rates as well. He was responsible for the first utility design tariff consistent with approved regulations. You would agree with me that he's the right person to sit on that seat, right? So he needs to explain to us what happened. Mr. Ume, right now he's the CEO of Electra Energy Services, a company he's just started off waiting to tap into all the opportunities in the power sector. He holds a bachelor's degree in surveying from the University of Nigeria, MBA in finance from Pepperdine University in California. And last but not the least is Comrade Prince Will Okorie. Comrade said to me when he came this morning, and I said, Comrade, he says, oh, do you have a problem with the name Comrade? I said, no, I don't really have a problem. He says, no, Comrade is a title for anyone that fights for the good of the society. So I said, of course, okay, that makes a lot of difference. that is what he is, and he's here to fight and speak on behalf of the people of Nigeria, on behalf of all of us, basically. So you're all welcome. All right. So I think, without much ado, I have a list of questions here which we need to delve into very quickly, right? So we can get this conversation going. So let's start by saying, we'll all agree on some basic things. Issues pertaining to improved electricity affects all of us, right? And then, so we have to look for a way to solve this. Privatization took place 6 years ago. We had expectations, most of which haven't been fulfilled. We all agree, right? We wanted an investor-friendly zone. We wanted increased bilateral contracts. We wanted a cost-reflective tariff. I'm not sure where we are on this trajectory. But whatever the case is, we have to assist the stakeholders solve this problem. And I think that's the whole essence of the dialogue. So let's agree on basic things. I'm a lawyer by profession, and basically I'd like all of us to agree on what the definition is. So when we're talking, you know, knowing exactly what we're all talking about. So what is a cost-reflective tariff? Remember, the discussion is cost-reflective tariff, service delivery, which should come first. So what do we understand as a cost-reflective tariff? I took time to look this up, right? And cost-reflective tariff essentially means the true cost of supplying electricity. It removes reliance on government subsidies, right? Which covers the variance between the current tariff and the cost of supplying electricity. So it's actually what is the true cost of supplying electricity. Now, of course, we know what service delivery is. It has to do with the design, development, and deployment of operations, right, to a specific user. So let's start with this in mind, right? With this definition, so we understand exactly what we're talking about. I'll start by asking the regulator. Well, the former regulator, but you know. Can you tell us how you determined tariff? How tariff is determined? You have 10 minutes per, yeah, okay. I think we should give them 10 minutes each to actually put forward their positions on each of this before we go into specific questions. So, do you want to start this, Patrick?
Good evening, and thank you, Joyce. Everybody, you're welcome. It's really nice to sit here with the audience and the operators and also the consumers themselves to discuss this perennial issue of power supply, aggravation with tariff. It's been there, but it can be addressed. In Joy's opening statement, which I found kind of interesting about whether Tesla is coming here to compete with utilities or not, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Tesla is an advanced technology in automobile. They use electricity to power their cars, which creates demand in our system. But also, it will also create an opportunity for them to use their technology to invest in power generation in the business, which also will benefit distribution companies if they are thinking of doing embedded generation within their own network. Some of the constraints we see in the system that still exist today is it's not that we have adequate generation, but what we have can't get to the consumers. So you have issues of constraint on transmission, inadequate generation, then the mega issue in the distribution network also. So when customers complain about service delivery, their main issue is not necessarily the tariff. Is that they're paying whatever they're paying to, they're not getting service. Because everybody understands that when you self-generate like we do in many cases, either using fuel or diesel, it costs you 5 times more than when the power company gives you the power directly and you pay your tariff. That brings me down to the question of cost-reflective tariff. Joy has given you a dictionary definition of cost-reflective tariff. How do you get there? In a perfect system, maybe not near perfect, but in a good system where you have different customer classes, the utility serves each customer class from a network and equipment that are costed. The more you transform high voltage to lower voltage, the more it costs utility. So clearly, for a low voltage consumer like residential customers, it costs the utility more to serve them than it costs the other person who takes power at a higher voltage, but they don't do the next level of transformation. So the question is, has the utility determined their cost to serve each customer class? If you determine your cost to serve each customer class, then they can begin to present a good case excuse me, for cost-reflective tariffs. So what we have today, Joy's question was, how do you determine tariff? We determine tariff currently by, it's a building block. The transmission company gives you their own cost, generation company gives you their own cost, distribution company gives you their own cost, you amalgamate that into all the other costs, ancillary services that you incur and all the service costs. And you come up with what you call a tariff benchmark to other environments. Is that truly cost-reflective tariff? Because things change. Foreign exchange change, because gas supply is based on dollar. Gas cost is based on dollar. But you pay your tariff in Naira. So it cannot remain, you can't actually determine or project where your tariff is going to go in true essence if you have a mishmash of currencies between which you determine the bottom line tariff. Secondly, the capex for the utilities, the distribution company in this case, is not properly determined because some of the costs that go into the tariff could be offset over a long term, okay? But that investment, when made, is not properly captured and can't even be verified. Thirdly, the regulator needs to do a good job of monitoring the performance of DISCOs in relation to what they have invested. Monitoring them doesn't mean you can't create an adversarial role. It has to be a partnership. Because when you talk about privatization, privatization is still a novelty in Nigeria. How many years? Less than 10 years. So it's difficult for people to understand why they have to pay for anything. Sometimes it's good to tell ourselves the truth. Many people are used to getting things for free in Nigeria, but today utility, electricity is no longer free. Government has stepped aside and sold it to private people. Yes, they own 40% share in it. So they have to operate to serve us as consumers, but also have to be in business together. It's all about how we look at it. But for this industry to move forward, I believe there has to be, it has to culminate into consumers understanding the role of government. Government owns 40%. Understand the role of government, understand the regulators, understand the role of the operators, and take on your own responsibility of making sure that when your tariff, and when you get your bills, you pay on time, and also mitigate energy theft and all that. Now, for me, I stay in the balanced situation because I'm a consumer. I was a consumer, okay, currently, but also I've been in the industry to know how to operate. So let's have this segue and have this dialogue to the point where when we leave today, next year, I can say these are the things we picked up from the consumers and from some of the panelists, and they can move forward with that.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I think Patrick has said something that's really, that we really actually must take note of. Firstly, the utility company must determine exactly, the cost to each of the customers, right? I mean, and that's really key. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. We must also remember that government is a key partner in this because they own 40%. And we must bear in mind for future, because we're going to have more discussion on this, the FX misalignment, right? Dollar, Naira plays a huge role in this place. So I think it's unfortunate we don't have someone from Central Bank here, but it would have been lovely to hear their perspective when it comes to FX, considering the role it plays in this market. Thank you so much, Patrick. Mr. Manu, do you want to talk about from the EAEDC angle?
Yes, thank you. Given the introduction and Patrick's earlier comments, I guess I'll try and fit in some of what's already been said. I think firstly the topic of discussion this evening latches into a very important aspect about investment and what conditions are necessary to create a conducive environment for investment. Quite obviously, I will try and take a fairly investor-centric role in discussing this matter. A significant portion of the tariff is an amount for covering finance costs, and this is primarily financing investment that is required to expand the network, improve services, improve the reach and quality of service available to consumers. The question we have before us, therefore, is what tariff levels represent the true level of consumers' willingness and ability to pay for improved services. I am using the term tariff in this case in a in what I call its gross determination, rather than what the customer is actually paying, but the cost of service to the customer, sort of jumping between the two definitions. We therefore have to look at it costs something. It costs a real figure to provide a service as where we stand now, and it costs investments, finance costs to invest in improvement of that service. And therefore, what we are asking ourselves, given that where we are now, and since privatization, I think, dare I say that there have been some improvements. The service levels, quality is still way below everybody's expectation, including ourselves as investors to the sector. But there have been some movements. The thing about the investment question for improving the sector metrics is that for every naira that we seek to put into the sector, there are, whether this be from the private sector or the public purse, there are competing uses for that naira. And for private sector especially, this means that the money will flow to uses that have got the most returns for the least risk. At the end of the day, private sector money is derived from pension funds, it's derived from wealthy individuals that expect a healthy return, especially money that comes into infrastructure finance is usually of the sort that people expect a nice steady return over a period. And therefore it is important that it is invested in an instrument. In the end, we are essentially investing in the tariff, and that tariff has to show us a return. I hope that we will agree that when it comes to funding the power sector, which is essentially an infrastructure-based industry, three main sources of funding, ultimately. And this is sort of in a transitory manner. First of all, the consumer and the user of the infrastructure service, so the consumer of power, through their bill, settling their bill is the primary funder to the sector. The private operator or owner of the infrastructure where the service is privatized on concession is also a funder on the expectation of a return on the invested funds. And of course, the government as part of its development agenda. With infrastructure services, ultimately it is my belief that whether or not it's been handed to private sector to run, the role of government cannot be taken out. Government will always be there, and that is why essentially power sectors will be regulated monopolies. The components of the tariff include the money to build, finance, and maintain, and operate the clients and networks. And that finance part is an important aspect, because without that we do not get the investment needed to improve the quality. So the question for us is not whether or not the tariff should be paid, which is the cost of this power should be paid. It is even now being paid, the full cost. It is just a question of who is getting to pay it. So as it is, the consumer is paying, is not seeing the full extent of this cost and is paying a small bit. The investors in the sector, that's right up the distribution through generation, are also paying for this through the losses they're recording in their books. And of course the government, through various interventions, is paying for the full cost of the service. All this is hopefully a transitory situation where we are migrating the tariff to a position where the consumer of the service ultimately will be paying for what it takes to maintain the service level at the quality that we require. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. His perspective is particularly interesting. It almost seems like he's dancing between service delivery and cost-reflective tariff. On one hand, he tells us that we have the appropriate tariff, right? So all of you say we don't have a cost-reflective tariff. He thinks differently. On the other hand, he tells us that money is the problem, and who is paying. So, sector is paying, some other sector is not paying. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. Thank you so much. Comrade, do you want to tell us a little bit from your perspective?
Yes, I will. First of all, let me introduce myself properly.
I apologize.
Just to introduce others properly, and for me, it was more or less a joke, no problem. I'm a journalist by training. I'm the national president of Association for Public Policy Analysis. As I speak with you now, the National Public Relations Officer of Nigerian Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. I'm a publisher of Consumer Watch magazine. I'm the author of this work, Electricity Consumer Protection Handbook. This is extracted from Section 80 of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005, which shows you the rights of the consumers. Section 80 talks about consumer performance licensing, consumer protection licensing performance standards. And these standards deals with the issues that is really bothering consumers. Sincerely speaking, it looks as if trivializing the issue. When we talk about electricity in Nigeria, we don't talk about the governance of electricity services. For instance, why would NEC set up performance standards and they do not enlighten the citizens on it? The consumers are grossly ignorant of the performance standards. Take for instance, there's what they call Customer Service Standard of Performance for distribution companies, 2007. This, if you look at this book, I kept some copies downstairs, get it and look at the pages. You will see that Customer Service Standard of Performance for distribution companies deals with the time frame that the discos will deal with complaints of the consumers. Take for instance, fuse issues, problems that come as a result of discos equipment. Talk about reconnection and disconnection. You are not supposed to disconnect a consumer without a written notice within 10 working days. But the discos, the way they perform is like acting. I'm sorry to use that word. Now, our constitution in section 16(1)(a) stated that the state shall harness the resources of the nation and promote national prosperity and an efficient, dynamic and self-reliant economy for every citizen on the basis of social justice and equality of status and opportunity. No nation in the world will want its citizens to be defrauded openly, and certain arms of the government give cover to the discourse to defraud Nigerians. I give you some practical examples. You are talking about investment. Who is the investor in the sector? Is the investor the foreigner that gives you loan to buy transformer, buy pole, buy armored cable, buy feeder pillars, and then energize them? Which Nigerians are doing. On the 17th of December, we held Consumer Protection Forum in Imo State. Why I had not returned till Monday is because of issues that came from it. Take this practical example. Here is the disco that under performance agreements agreed that they were going to expand network. They were going to carry out network expansion to an extent, and they were going to provide a certain quantity of meters. No meter anywhere in the southeast. Most states there don't have meters. A community said they spent 40 million naira. They bought about 50 poles. They bought 500 kVA transformer. They bought 70 mm armored cable. They paid the disco to energize it. And then they gave the light. Another community has 11 kVA and went and bought 33 kVA. They wanted to connect through these other people. They said, no, we spent 40 million. You must give us some part of the money. The disco is busy collecting money. And this community that want money to be, that want to be connected, the disco quickly told them to settle outstanding bills and made them pay 1.7 million as outstanding bills. Even collected what they call outage fee, which is nowhere in the law. And the discos are collecting what they call reconnection fee, which is nowhere in the law. They go do mass disconnection, which is nowhere in the law. Now, all these violations of the law, how do you situate them? Yet you have a regulator in the country who should be able to call them to order. Now, look at the next stage. The regulator refuses to enlighten the people and then created a very difficult consumer complaint management mechanism. They said they have a NEC forum office. This NEC forum office, you have to report, you have to write to the disco, wait for 10 days or 15 days. If they don't act, you remain in darkness for 10 or 15 days. If they don't act, you now escalate to the disco. You escalate to NEC. And NEC begins to take through processes that will take almost 3 months before you get out of office. How many consumers will go through that? Can any foreign country accept this? Because the investments will be dying. So it goes beyond just talking about the tariff increase. But what we are interested in is, why would our citizens be treated as animals by institutions of state? Now, why would it be that you go to people today, in my office today, people from Ado and Maraba came to me. One community has electricity. They spent their money to buy transformer, buy cable, buy wire, connect, paid to be connected. Another community wanted to connect. They said they won't give them until they settle them some money. Here is the disco that is supposed to be the investor. Now, where do you put these local investors? These community people that bought these transformers, bought the armored cable, paid all this money. Are those ones not investments? Nobody recognizes them. Nobody gives them any attention. Yet the disco goes to them, extort money without providing the service. So what we are talking about here is not just tariff increase, but as far as we are concerned, there is need to look at these things in more critical ways. In Buhari Area Council, Oga, you are in they said you are involved in AEDs. I give you a practical example. In Buhari Area Council, in November, people that had to pay meters, AEDC will go and accuse them that the meter is not good. They disconnect them and put them on estimated billing. For goodness sake, there is estimated billing methodology approved by NEC. Before you give this bill, you have to read the transformer, check the feeder pillar, know the quantity of energy that has gone through that, and then remove the losses and remove the bills you give to the metered consumers, and then bring out the bill for unmetered consumers. This is never done anywhere, and they are not punished for it. When will these costs be punished? When will the citizens have leverage in such a way that they believe that their country considers their well-being as important? But the way the people are treated here, and you wonder, where is the education we all claim we have? Nobody in NEC is an illiterate. The values of truth, honesty, justice, fair play is absent in such a situation. So we should discuss electricity governance first, before we can even talk about tariff or service delivery. Why would NEC abdicate their responsibility? There's serious negligence on the part of NEC, and that negligence has brought a kind of technical connivance between NEC and the discos, and the people suffering are the consumers. That cannot happen in any foreign country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okore, for that very passionate delivery. I think we needed some energy in the room, and he gave it to us.
No, please. Don't you trivialize this discussion, please. Don't go that way.
No,
Please don't trivialize it. Be serious about it. This is a serious
So
matter.
please, next year, take note for your next dialogue. You know, you talk about governance, but for today, we're talking about cost-reflective tariff and service delivery. So let's try to stick to today's discussion, and next month we'll have another topic for discussing. Thank you so much. Right, so now I think we need audience participation. You've heard from all of us on the panel, and so we would like contributions from the audience as well.
All right, but before we do that, wanted to announce the results for the poll. What do you guys think happened? Service delivery came in at 50. Tariff came in at 14.
Wow.
Some of you didn't vote. But we'll take 5 questions only, and then we'll go back to the panelists. So, hands up.
I'd like to start off with section 16. Apparently, that shows that power supply falls within the major sector of the economy. And therefore, we cannot ignore the role of government. And that's why, like you rightly said, who pays? The consumer, government, and of course the investors. Now, but very importantly, the question we're asking this evening is similar to the question between development and peace, which one comes first? Now, do we say peace comes first before development, or development before peace? Frankly speaking, you need to bring the product to the market before you can deliver. So how do you get the product to the market if cost-reflective tariff is ignored? So on that basis, you realize that good enough, the federal government still has 40% in the discos. And if truly we can situate the power sector within the major sector of the economy that the government should not ignore, then I think the government needs to play more role in funding this sector. And that's very critical. Because that's the only way we can get the product to the market for the consumers to buy. Otherwise, we're not likely to move forward on this discussion. That's number one. Now, Madam Moderator, you said something about the misalignment between the effects and, of course, the gas supply and all of that. But I think we have the domestic gas supply policy and pricing in place, and the aggregator, gas aggregator also. Now, that's meant to bridge whatever gap exists, so that and to ensure that we have the LNG. And we have a lot of domestic gas in this country. So we're not necessarily importing, and we're not buying at the same rate gas is sold at the international gas market. So because we are setting aside some percentage of gas to
Where's the question?
Within. Sorry?
I thought you had the question. Where's the question?
Okay, I've asked the question. So I think what's the role of the gas aggregator? In terms of the misalignment with effects and all of that. Thank you.
First, I want to raise a comment before the question, just a very short one to the organizers of those events. When I saw the topic, it was kind of somehow, but sitting down here now, I have to say bluntly that the topic that was chosen for this dialogue is a very wrong one. There's no such thing as a tariff increase. It's cost-reflective tariffs. Service delivery. That's the fair and the sincere way it's supposed to be, because this is quite misleading. I mean, if you throw this out to someone out there, they just look at it and they won't really understand the context behind it. And my question is to Mr. Patrick. Amaki is actually he's part of the panelist today because it was actually part of the team that supervised the last. In fact, the current tariff the sector is running on is actually the man that was in charge of the division that produced that tariff. So, Mr. Patrick, while you were giving your opening remarks, you were specific on whether the tariff is reflective or not, though you emphasize on the importance of service delivery. But my question to you, sir, is looking at the macroeconomic variables you put, your team put in the MITO that time, the inflation rate, the FX rates, the generation level, looking at all these variables, I need a blunt answer from you, sir. Do you think the tariff is cost reflective? Thank you.
Discos have failed to bring in the investment that's required, and also the telcos to produce at the level of power generation that is required to meet the variables you put in the tariff calculations. Nigerians are holding the short end of the stick, so we're caught between a rock and a very hard place. The question is, in my mind, that we should increase tariff, but I can make that argument only if the discos have collected all of the receivables under the current tariff. But if the discos are reporting that they are collecting just about 30% on the current tariff, there is no guarantee that if we increase or even double the tariffs today, that will collect enough to fix what needs to be fixed in the sector. So I'm stuck. That although my capitalist self would say get it to cost reflective, the realistic part of me shows that the discos are either unable to collect or refusing to return what they are collecting. And if it is the second, then increasing the tariff means that you're putting more money in the pockets of the discos without getting the commensurate investment in the sector that is required. So I'd like the disco to help us unpack it. My question, thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Obinna. I think my question is just very short. I just want to know, how do I know exactly what I pay for? I ask this question because if you go to my house, I have not less than 5 different stabilizers. I use stabilizer because the electricity supply is not stable most times. So in other words, maybe the supplier is not supplying exactly what I pay for, so I need to get another machine to be able to stabilize that. So as a consumer, how do I know whether I am making the right payment to my supplier or not? Thank you.
Patrick, as well from here. First of all, I must say there's this gross inefficiency on the part of the government. That's the number one driving force in the power sector. And also on the part of the generators, distributors, and even, in fact, in Abuja, ADC person. The question is, what is the role of the government, Mr. Patrick, in time of public enlightenment? I mean, what's the role of the media? Because it's like Nigerians are just, we are being, should I say, we're being robbed at gunpoint. That's the truth. I don't have a problem with the current tariff. If we increase the tariff to even 10,000 naira, right? I must tell you, if the services are not improved upon, we can't get it right. So my question is, what's the role of the media? Enlightening the public about what they are consuming. Thank you.
We do know that government has been putting in money into the sector and continues to do so through NBET and through monies they're putting through the district separately. Right? Just to re-emphasize, buttress what Patrick has said, that monies continue to be put in this sector, and somehow, in my opinion, it's like a bottomless pit. Right? So it would be nice to hear from a government perspective what the thinking is. But in absence of that, Yes.
Since privatization, I can tell you what government has put in the sector. I'm aware that after privatization, all the debts of the discos, the gencos were all warehoused and taken to TCN. To NAMCO, so that the gencos and the discos will operate on a clean slate. And then in 2014, government provided 213 billion that they call CBN, 213 billion naira that they call CBN CBN Stabilization Fund. After that, also for 2014, government also provided another 702 billion that they call payment assurance scheme. I can tell you today that the discos collect about 65% on average, but they remit less than 30% to the other sectors. Now, because this is happening, the gas providers are threatening the generators. The generators are saying that they will shut down. So right now, government is also seeking a $1 billion loan from the World Bank to put in the sector, in addition to a budgetary provision of 927 billion. You see, so I think it's not fair to say that government has folded its arms. TCN also believes that its tariff is not cost reflective. But TCN is, despite the fact it's getting 35% of its bill, it's still putting transformers in all those places, and TCN is not folding its arms. It's hoping that one day tariff will go up so that it can pay its workforce, can take care of its workforce properly. But the problem I have with the discos is that I worked in Abuja distribution company before, and I know the performance of Abuja disco before privatization. Although we were aided by revenue cycle managers, some guys from South Africa and all that, Abuja distribution company was collecting 80% of its bill, and whatever you collected in those days, you had to remit. You had to give it to the market operator. Woe betide you if you kept the money, you will be in trouble. But today, Abuja Disco is remitting some 35%. Ikeja and Eko distribution companies were very great companies in those days, also aided by revenue cycle managers. They were collecting close to 90% of the bill and remitting everything. But today they're remitting 35%. So now, I have a feeling that the 702 billion payment assurance money is drying up. So the government is going to have to look for money again to fund the sector. So the issue is not just about service delivery. It's about indiscipline. It's about indiscipline. The governance structure in the power sector is poor. If you collect money and you don't remit, and no one is talking about it, I tell my friends that look, our generation will never see good power structure. If you go on like this, the power sector is going to collapse.
Thank you so much. Those are the questions from the
Larry asked the question about what is the role of gas aggregate, I believe. That is clearly an issue that government and NNPC, PBRA, they have control over. The gas aggregator, what they do is they sell the gas to generators and it's guaranteed so that there's always the generation to, there's always going to be generation to the discos. Now their cost also is captured in that tariff for the long-term tariff. but it is reviewed every 6 months to see if there's any change in the macroeconomics indices, foreign exchange, inflation, and all that. Now, in many cases, when those reviews are made, depending on the percentage of the differential, if it's above 2.5% or the baseline, you don't do anything. But if it's below that, you don't do anything. But if it's above that, then you adjust the tariff accordingly. In addition to that also, the capacity of generation depends also on the gas. So our key issue is how do gas companies get this so that they continue to generate power into the system. It's an area that is huge that we can't cover in this conversation, but it's an area, like Joy mentioned, that we should have the responsible players, the gas company, the gas aggregator, embeds in a room to have that conversation, to explore its implications fully in the tariff setting. Ola, sorry if I don't get your name correct, but you work with EMRC, right? Your question was, is tariff cost reflective when you look at inflation and the FX? At the time you design the tariff, you take into consideration the input given to you by the operators. Now let's understand that. A tariff is set, it's a model. A DISCO says, these are my costs. These are my projections for my CapEx investment. They provide that data to you. The thing you get from central bank will be maybe inflation cost, foreign exchange, and capacity you get from existing supply you get from the market operator. But all the data that goes into tariff setting comes from the operators. Transmission send their own, DISCO send theirs, and GENCO send theirs. And they use the gas pricing for that period to equal the tariff. So at the point when you set that tariff, except for things like administrative costs, you debate with the DISCOs if they want to employ 10,000 people, say why 10,000? If they want to buy several cars, say why several cars? So that's where it may not be cost reflective. But there is no climate in which you're going to have a cost reflective tariff as in situ. It's always going to be an adjustment which is built into the tariff model so that if it changes, you adjust to make sure that they cover those costs. Now, Patrick, your position was very clear and very succinct. I mean, if there's going to be an increase in tariff, what has the DISCOs done to reduce their collection, their losses? DISCOs, when they signed the contract, the government, they projected reduction of the aggregate loss in their system, which include technical loss, commercial loss, and collection losses. You're very correct. If a DISCO sells power, if you sell your commodity to somebody, you must collect. You can't go back to your bank and say, hey, I sold my goods to Mr. A. I can't pay you back your loan. Give me more money so I can continue to be in business. I don't know how well the DISCOs have done in reduction of their losses, but I think they need to do a better job to reduce their losses. Clearly. That will offset some of the issues or the constraints on the tariff right now. But the bottom line is that to get cost-reflective tariff, a whole lot has to go in that the DISCOs and the operators have been done. You can't give a wrong data and expect a good result. If the data is there to support what you're doing, first you must enumerate your customers very, very well, segregate them in their classes, provided for in the tariff model. Commercial customers must be charged at commercial rate. I've seen commercial customers being charged as residential rate. You can't break even. I also see industrial customers being charged commercial rate. But the model itself takes into consideration that the residential customers must be subsidized. So it's that higher tariff that goes to the industrial because they are profit making. So when you start withering away the industrial base, it affects your customers. But to the DISCOs, if you listen carefully to all the questions or comments made here, it's still about the same thing. There must be transparency. There must be proper accountability. There must be good data to support the tariff regime. It's not that people don't want to pay the tariff, but once they pay the tariff, they need to see improvement in service. They also want to see that the DISCOs have taken responsibility to reduce their losses. The loss is a huge issue.
Thank you so much, Patrick. But we'll come back to you on this issue of tariff because we need to find out exactly what should be the cost-reflective tariff. What exactly should it be? The tariff today isn't what it is. taking into account the FX changes, right, as presented by the CBN? Because sometime last year, Nigeria went into recession because there was a whole issue of fixed and floating rates, right, and in our policy. And when the CBN let out the foreign, we had let out when we had a floating exchange rate, the Naira became $1 to like $500, and it put us into a state of recession. And so I think the question is, how did that affect investment in the discos, right? I mean, would our economic model as presented by Maito, did that take that into consideration, or did that increase the cost to the disco, making it difficult for the disco to be able to provide service delivery, as discussed? So, Mr. Amiman, would you want to talk a little bit more about the service delivery, because quite a number of issues have been raised on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I suppose the issues raised are by and large very genuine concerns from the public, but they also, to a very large extent, show why a forum like this one is very, very important, because there are lots of, I'll call it, personal stories about the power sector that are out there, which, if we are honest, are probably fed more by anecdotes than actual proper statistical support from, say, NERC and things. I'd like to start ticking off a couple of issues that have been raised. Firstly, as Patrick has said, one of the major parameters around privatization was the so-called aggregate technical, commercial, and collection loss. For AEDC in particular, at privatization, ATC and C losses were at 59. There was a study which was asked for by both BPE and NERC to determine that. As at the close of 2018, the average ATC and C loss for Abuja Disco is 33%. That is still high on a global basis. It does, though, represent a significant movement in that particular parameter. And to put that into some sort of context in terms of what it actually means in Naira, at privatization, the month that we took over, collections at AEDC were 1.8 billion Naira. The average for last year was about 5.5 billion Naira, and in fact, as at December, we had even crossed the 7 billion mark. So this 5.5 was the average for the years. So there are movements in this, and there are real strides being taken. As to the comment as to how much was collected in the PHCN days and today, it might be true that during PHCN days, the collection rate for Abuja was 80% and is now a whole lot lower. I would like to remind, well, maybe it might not be a reminder, but for those that do not know, the bulk tariff has actually got automatic indexing in it. So the tariff that the disco is charged from NBET has got indexing tied to exchange rate, gas price, etc. During the period 2016 through 2017, we all know what happened to the Naira. That automatically, at the time, MITRE was set in 2015, which has already been confirmed is the mitre we are operating under now. The tariff for the consumer was set with the assumption that the Naira to dollar exchange rate was below 200. So where do you think this has been absorbed? So when we look at that figure as a percentage, yes, there's a drop in the percentage of collection. But if you look at the actual Naira that's being collected, it has actually gone up, and without a tariff increase. So there is a very significant performance improvement, if I may say so. I think there was an issue of quality of power. How do I know I'm paying the right amount? I do agree our quality of power in a lot of, there are lots of circumstances where we come across power quality that is outside norms. This is unfortunately a factor of the fact that there is low energy on the network. We do not have sufficient energy, and at times the question is for the operators out there is one of suffering some degradation in the voltage that's put out there versus cutting off a feeder. And the decisions might not always be to the advantage of the consumer. But I will assure you that if you are metered, all the meters that are in the system are approved, are built to an approved standard, and to some extent will cater for some of those poor quality voltages. It is, however, very true, and I will admit there will be errors coming out of some of those voltages. And by the way, the errors work both ways, because in fact, we find in a lot of cases that when voltage is very low, the meters do not move. So the company also loses out of that. I don't know if there's any other.
Yes.
I have a view to express. For instance, this reflective tariff we are talking about. How many metered consumers are served in Nigeria? How many unmetered consumers are served? What is the mechanism? A transparent revenue generation. This is a sector where the state government is a shareholder, local government council is a shareholder, and the consumers reside in local government and states. Yet, the state Ministry of Power or Public Utility has no inventory as regards the number of consumers that pay for electricity in their state. Neither do the local government council have any. So everything is just at the beck and call of the DISCO. The DISCO now says, yes, we are collecting less. And then we say, yes, they are collecting less. I tell you, in Imo, for instance, where we just came back from, each autonomous community under bulk billing is made to pay not less than 750,000 every month, whether you use the light or not. And this light comes towards the end of the month when they want to collect money. They'll give you like 2 or 3 days. They'll collect their money and you return to darkness. Now, this kind of system, how can we say the tariff is? Why is the state and local government outside knowledge of what is collected? Who will tell us the truth? Now, why is there no consumer enumeration to really show that these are the people that are metered, these are the people that are not metered? Estimated billing. Today, somebody came to my office from Kano. One room is being billed 40,000. His meter got burnt. They refused to change it. Now they're billing him. The guy came crying that we should write a complaint on his behalf. At Life Camp, another group came. Their meter got burnt about 10 years ago. They kept writing for change, no change. Bills were being given them on estimation, high bills. We wrote in November, no attention to that letter. December they've been given, this January they've been given 100,000 naira bill to pay. And when, like I said, they say clear your outstanding debt. How do you determine this outstanding debt? Who in NEC monitors the billing system to really know whether the estimated billing methodology is followed or not? Rather, what you see is they write for you, go and pay 50,000, and then you go begging and you pay in some money. The next one they write 100,000. Before you know it, they will now say that you clear outstanding bill of almost 500,000 that you can't say when you used it. Such a system that is so porous and so untransparent and insincerity is at the base of this business. And any business that is founded on insincerity and abuse of rights can never succeed. Even if you plan well, that you are cheating on people, their God will not allow you to work. See, Azikiwe said that what brought about the fall of civilizations is the abuse of the people's rights. And the more you abuse the consumers' rights, abuse the rights of the people, oppress them, exploit them, and extort from them, there's no how the system can work. So the thing now is, please, why is there no consumer enumeration? How many consumers do AEDC serve, for instance? How many metered consumers are AEDC serving? How many unmetered consumers are they serving? What methodology are they using for this estimated bill? And what mechanism do you have in Abuja to really understand whether these bills that they are giving are being given in line with what the law says, or they're just giving whatever they like? Finally, why is there no interaction with the consumers to get all these their complaints and address them?
Thank you so much, Comrade. I think everything he said is actually quite justifiable, and you know, it's actually right. And unfortunately, we don't have any current NERC commissioner here to answer to those. Patrick is an ex-commissioner of how many years ago? Like 4 years ago. So he's a little bit stale, you know. So probably can you speak to those issues? Can you speak to some of those issues? So let's speak.
Let me give you this information. NEC is not willing to address these things. We have approached NEC. In fact, last November we had to meet with the permanent secretary, Federal Minister of Power, on this issue. We told NEC, let there be enlightenment. Okay. And they said it's only the discos that they gave the power to enlighten. How can discos who are collecting and exploiting be the only ones to enlighten?
The essence of this dialogue, right, is to be able to put together our suggestions and put it forward to them, right? So even if Eric hasn't answered, listen individually, but I'm sure, you know, next year dialogue will be able to put it forward to them in a way that they'll understand. Mr. Emmanuel, did you want to speak to some of the issues you raised?
Yes, and again, I guess it's, I start off with the statement I made in my last response, the importance of this forum for making us all aware of the facts on the ground. Enumeration, 1 million customers. Just last week, I believe, NERC released its statistics for how many are metered and how many are not metered. For Abuja, we had 54% of our customer base metered. The enumeration process is ongoing. It is not yet complete, but that it's essentially done, and we are now just going through cleaning up the issues that were picked up during enumeration. So that is a fact that you can verify, and I am very, very available. If you, even the issues you're saying about complaints and things, if you have actually been to AEDC and have not had, or the people have been to AEDC and have not had audience or proper response, I am more than happy to take that up. I understand, and I very, very much agree that our customer relations side of things as a DISCO is probably one of the areas that we have had to do the most work on. It is an area of the organizational culture that is taking a whole lot of time to shift. Meters we can put up, and we are putting up, that's a question of money. But to get the hearts and souls of the workforce to be thinking in the dispensation that the customer is, they're no longer in a way the boss to the customer. The customer employs them. The customer puts the money into the system that we are all using. That is work in progress. It is taking a while, but I'd like to also just say here that just last month, a new commercial management system has been installed at AEDC, which I believe will do quite a bit with respect to the customer or the billing process and vending process interaction with the customer. I would, to that effect, also like to point out that for those that are in Abuja, I believe over the years, in 2013, 2014, if you needed to buy, if you're a prepaid customer and you needed to buy power, you had a couple of places to go to. For most of us, I do not know when you last needed to actually go to an AEDC point. You can do it on your phone. Those are real changes that are taking place. I agree again, it is not sufficient, it's not everything, but if we fail to recognize the small things that are improving, that are moving us forward, we will throw this whole thing out and end up losing even the little traction we managed to get.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bala.
There was a question about what actually is cost-reflective tariff. Now, let me try to simplify this. The cost of doing business in Abuja is different from cost of doing business in Town. And the wages you pay in Abuja are higher than the wages you pay in Town. So if you really want to get a cost-reflective tariff, you mentioned about state involvement and all that. These are things that should be localized in the service area, franchise area of the distribution company. So that Abuja Disco can say within this service territory that it costs me more to serve in Abuja than it costs me to serve in Nasarawa. Okay. But these are things that have to evolve. I don't know anywhere in the world where you have one tariff for the whole country. I live in Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles has a different tariff from Edison territory, just one street over. I pay a different tariff, Edison, Los Angeles. Totally different, yet within the same county. So until we start looking at tariff as a reflection of cost of doing business in that local area, then we're never going to get to cost-reflective tariff.
So will it be right to say that the nomenclature of cost-reflective tariff is a misnomer?
No, it's not a misnomer in the context in which it's used right now, because we apply it generally across the board. Okay. But when you really want to get to it, it has to be a reflection of, if you go to Day Market and you buy a bath-tub, and if you go to Wire, same bath-tub, they'll be cheaper. It is what it is. So let's be innovative. Let's shift our paradigm from where it is today to start looking at where do we really want to be in the future. States, local government, federal are part owners of this business. Why are states not involved in determining what tariff you charge their citizens? But these are things that will take time to get it, but there's always going to be some conflict, power tussle. Are you giving the states too much? But if you go to the Constitution, Federal, I believe section 8 or so of the Federal Constitution, I forgot the exact section, it clearly states that the states have the obligation and responsibility to provide utility to their citizens. It's in our Constitution. We have a system that's not implementing that right now, and that's what is causing that problem across the world.
So what I hear is that there's actually a challenge with the cost-reflective tariff, which is why I asked the question, is it a misnomer? Number one, what he said is that the tariff varies from Umuahia, and it is different in Abuja, right? So number one, so there isn't one cost-reflective tariff across board. Number two, the cost of doing business in each is different. And number three, the other thing he mentioned earlier was that, is it sustainable though? Because you see, with the change in FX, and the misalignment of Naira and dollar, the question is, the tariff as modeled today, the economic model we use today, is this sustainable for next year? I mean, so take for example, the CBN takes off the cap on the FX, and we have a floating exchange rate. What happens to the tariff there? Is there really, that's what I mean by, is there really a cost-reflective tariff? And how can we make it sustainable so that investors can actually come in and do business? And I think that is why we're here today, to be able to arrive at some sort of conclusion. Can we get participation from the audience, please? We need a bit more interaction on this.
In order to capture these things properly, just like he has talked about states getting involved in the fixing tariff, what about collection? Shouldn't a state know how much has been collected from his state as a shareholder in the disco? Shouldn't the LGA know? So that when these arguments come, some time ago there was argument between the Minister for Power and the discos over how much the government was owing them, federal government was owing them. If there was a system whereby the Ministry of Power was able to follow through collections in that sector, that argument between the federal government and the discos wouldn't have been there. But you could see that argument. The discos will claim is this amount that owing. These people will claim, and then paying the Jenkos. When the discos now pay what they like, and they give 30% and still hold the consumers and the juggler and collect all their own, then pay the Jenkos becomes a problem.
Mr. Corey, let's hear what Mr. Abe wants to say from a regulator's perspective.
Mr. Corey, I totally understand the passion for this, but I just want us to focus on what will here can benefit everybody. I don't want you to misunderstand when I say states should be involved, that states will now, in this current climate, under the regulations that we have right now, under the act to that states will now come and start regulating the operators. It can't happen until, it can't happen until the laws are changed. For the state to get data from the regulator, I don't think the regulator is going to deny them data if they request for it. Like Emma has explained, if they want enumeration, they'll get it. They provide their data, and they collect their data and they give it to the regulator, the foreign regulator. So if the state wants to get that information, it's public information. Actually, if you go to NEC website, most of them may even be there. So let's be sensitive to the rule of law, okay, and also take into consideration on how consumers perceive it. I will totally agree with you that there needs to be better communication. Communication in the sense that information has to be put out there for you. But in the modern age today, it's cheaper for you to do it online than it is for you to do it through the media. But that should not absorb the responsibility, the obligation to provide information to the customer from either the operators or the regulators. So I just want us to make sure we stay within the framework of what the laws are.
Can we get a bit more participation?
I think this conversation is a bit biased. You're not allowing the gentleman from the policy to speak. Allow him to speak. I mean, I think every time you just try to cut him off or just push him over is a comment. My question now is the issue about tariff and service delivery, or let's say reflective tariff and service delivery. I know it's more like a chicken and egg situation, which is why it's a bit hard because, of course, investment is needed to make it work. But on the other hand, people want to see that there's proper service delivery to dish out their money. Now, simple analogy. For everyone here, I'm going to ask a question. Who knows how much they pay per second to make a call? Here. Anyone? Okay.
11 kobo.
How many people?
11 kobo.
No, MTN, whatever. Okay, the point still remains that the reason why we don't care usually when we make a call is because we make a call, there's instant feedback about how much our balance is, right? Or how much we pay to make a call. And it is the same analogy I want to use here. If I know you need to make this money to buy meters, but if people are not metered, then it becomes a very severe issue because now there's the issue of trust. Secondly, estimated billing system. Someone has asked this question about how do you decide that someone has an outstanding bill to pay before they are reconnected or before they get metered, because it's becoming very rampant across the country where you just have a bill of outstanding bills and you have to pay before you get connected or anything. So the question remains, it's a chicken and egg situation, but what is the DISCO doing about ensuring that people are metered and there's some level of trust, so that irrespective of what the tariff is, as much as I get my service delivery, I will just pass my money but ensure that I can find a way to conserve how much I consume based on how much any power I have.
Okay.
Service delivery, which comes first. For me, I think if there is a major impact or there's anything we can do concerning service delivery, that's we actually should come first, because that's actually bring how we can actually increase the tariff. Like you said, he asked the question that do anybody know how much we make a call? You know, it's just like when you buy a time on Naira, for instance. If you are using that, you know what you're using, you know how you're using it. But I think if we're talking about tariff increase here, we don't know what we are paying for. What is this doing about service delivery? Because if you are going to be metered, actually, we are talking about status, charging us according to status, charging us according to how we use, like maybe commercial use or maybe residential use. I feel if actually everywhere or everyone is metered, are we still going to be charged according to status or how we use this light? That's what I want to ask. Thank you.
I was at your office at Lupe, and I went there to pay my bill. They told us that they are rolling out meters, 23,000 of it, and that we have to pay 23,000 naira each if you want to get one. And then we will pay connection fee, and we will still pay the people. After we pay connection fee, we will still pay the people that came to collect it. I want to be sure, how much are we paying for meter? Now, the meter I'm paying for is not my property. It's your property. How will I get it from? Because if I leave the place, I can't move it. If I buy it now, I'm in a rented apartment. If I'm going, I can't remove it. Now, my landlord does not care. And then, when we registered 2 years ago for the estimated billing, when I got to the place, we registered. The first bill they gave me, and I can assure you that we had like at least 20 days in that first month. The first bill they gave me was 3,500. Now, from that 2 years ago till now, even though light has improved, I don't think I have, it should be, now they are giving me 15,000, 25,000 every month. What is determining what I'm paying? Now I've decided that I will not pay anything more than 10,000, whether they like it or not. If we are increasing it, I will reduce it for you. I will not pay more than 10,000. Now they now on top of the meter, do they have right to be writing the amount that I should pay? So those are the things that the issue we have. Now they are putting meters on transformer. I've not seen where that is done anywhere. You put meter on transformer to now be. What about the people that already have prepaid meter in their houses? How do we determine all these things? Because these are the issues we face. Now I've been in Lupe. The first place where I was, we bought the transformer. We bought the transformer. Yet you took it over, we are not compensated, and yet we are paying higher tariff. These are the fact that, like he said, these are the fact that it's obvious. And your people now goes with police to harass us. I don't know why that should be in place.
Thank you so much. Do you want to answer?
For AEDC, I cannot speak for other discourse today, but AEDC has installed in the past 3 years over 200,000 meters. These have been fairly well publicized projects, etc. But more than that, we have fully signed up to the government's meter asset provider program. So that is something which is coming down the road. However, I think the issue with individual metering issues is that we are going there, and you have I think the gentleman from Lupe mentioned metering charges. If I may, at the end of this, collect your details, I can look into that. But by and large, I will say, as a general thing, we do not charge for the installation of meters. We've had our own program, and as I've said, the organizational culture change is a very big issue that we are working on, and there are incidents out there we are very aware of. And what I would ask is that you give us the benefit of a doubt that not everybody in AEDC is trying to steal from you, and therefore maybe you will find one honest person in AEDC who will look at your case
Is there another question you want to ask?
I think there was a question of retail categories. The tariff categories. Having residential, commercial, and industrial. In fact, there's also a special category for some government facilities. That is a standard thing, and having meters will not change that.
I have a question myself. This has to do with that issue we haven't talked about since, and this relates to government encroachment in the jurisdiction of what we thought was the jurisdiction of the distribution companies. So I remember that at the time that there was privatization, they were supposed to have exclusive territory to where they supply, where you have the distribution network. But I don't know if that is enforced or if there is no such jurisdiction, and what effect has that had on your service delivery, if at all?
We invested very much on the understanding that we have a franchise, which is an area that we'll do business in. We also have had a path given that there will be phases of the development of the market to a stage where we could get bilateral contracts being drawn up. What has happened, I believe, is that we have jumped some of the transition, some of the interim stages, and that actually presents a very big risk to the stability of the sector. I think Patrick, in one of his earlier comments, talked about the fact that having different types of customers in the power in a power market allows for cross-subsidization. If today you were to ask Abuja Disco to essentially abandon all responsibility and just be purely commercial focus, I could take the power that I have, the 400 or 300 or so megawatts that come through, and select my 10, 100 top customers and give them everything, and I would have that way. So once you start cherry picking, what are you doing to the whole financial structure of that retail model? So it is, I think, very dangerous experiment that we have started with respect to taking out. It has to be. It comes at a certain stage in the evolution of the market, but it has to be approached with a whole lot of caution.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Former Commissioner Patrick Ruben. First of all, tariff increase in this political environment will be difficult. Yeah, not before the elections, not even after the elections. Yeah, it will be difficult. Number two, people will push back, like we've heard from him, because as the economy, tightens up, if you have to make a choice on how you spend your money, you push back when the discos, send the bills. This could lead to a significant impact, negative impact on the system. Metering is difficult. We understand you need a lot of resources to be able to meter everyone. The meter asset provider scheme could work, but we also saw that cap did not work. So there's a likelihood that it might not work. But we've also seen that Nigerians are willing to pay if they know what they're paying for. Yeah? So we pay our cell phone bills because we know what we pay for. How can the discos bring a bit more transparency to the estimated billing? How can the discos communicate more how they calculate the estimated bills and bring more transparency to that system? And my question for former Commissioner Ume is there any penalty that can be attributed to the discos if they do not bring this transparency? Because that would then be the incentive to make them bring transparency. And when we see a bit more transparency in the system, people will pay, and then it wouldn't be a question of service delivery or tariff increase. It will be basically, do what you need to do service delivery wise as a disco, and then people will pay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In estimated billing. It is interesting that there was a comment earlier. I did not latch onto it, but there was a comment earlier about why metering of transformers. Actually, that is a program which has been brought about to try and improve the transparency, because what we are saying is that a transformer is feeding probably 200, 500 homes. So if we know what has gone through that transformer, then we know for sure that this electricity has been shared amongst people in this neighborhood. We can take out those that are metered, or those that we can account for, and then using the methodologies that are there. And in fact, one of the things that we have been doing at AEDC with respect to this is a whole lot of community engagement where there are where essentially we have I'll call it organized sort of body to talk to. In some areas we are actually doing some of the readings together with some community participation with reading of the transformer meter. So this is actually, because to put this in some context in terms of numbers, as I mentioned earlier, we have 1 million customers. We have serving those million customers about 11,000 distribution transformers. So effectively, we are talking of we can put up meters on 10,000 sites relatively easier, even as we are rolling out the mass metering. We can have the improvement in the estimation by means of this distribution transformer metering. So that is where we are going with that.
All right, thank you so much. Patrick?
Yes, thank you. Patrick, your question about whether there is a penalty for discos, yes, there is. There's always been there. The question is enforcement. When a disco is penalized, there should be a way to provide that information, make that information accessible to consumers. There was a comment about, I think it was the gentleman standing right there about paying for the meter. I'm glad that Emma has clearly stated that the meter payment should be should not be borne by the customer. The ideal thing is this: to move into a house, there is a meter. Okay, when you leave the meter stage, the next tenant comes and signs up for that service. So there's a termination point for you and a beginning point for that new tenant. It's an anomaly for the customer to be the one that should provide the meter. Now, for new constructions, this is for your further disclosure. It should be a requirement for new constructions for the meter to be paid for upfront. So that by the time the house is completed or the premise is completed, there's already a meter. Whether it's the consumer that, whether it's the customer that the owner of the building that pays for it, or the utility, but it solves this problem before it even starts. Now, the last issue I have here will be about, just to follow up, whether you should be, sorry, if you know what you're paying for and how customers are billed. Now, consumption of electricity comes with consequence and impact on the utility itself providing it. Now, it is my responsibility as a consumer to employ all kinds of energy conservation to reduce my bill and also defer investment in new generation by the customer. So, in doing that also, in designing tariff, you must take into consideration that there are some customers that are really not so wealthy, that are poor. You give them a break. That's why I have residential 1, residential 2, in some cases lifeline customers and low-income customers. There's a different tariff for them. Now, in our context, what would be the threshold of energy consumption that puts you above that? The only way you can do that, to my knowledge, is through smart metering. A meter that can say, okay, when you use the energy to maybe, whatever is designed, 200 kilowatt hour, this is your tariff. Beyond 200 kilowatt hour, your tariff goes to the next one. And as you use more, you pay more. That will force me as a consumer to immediately start reducing my energy consumption, start to get into that high tariff, high energy use tariff. But also takes into account that there are inequality in salary, so the lower income people can pay less in their energy consumption.
Well, thank you so much for that explanation. Do you want to say something, Mr. Curry?
Please, consumers that are here, one way to improve service delivery is for us to really document our complaints properly. If we do not document them and submit and have our copies and engage NEC forum office, because if you engage NEC forum office, the disco will be jittery. But many consumers don't know that. Now, there is need for us to actually understand. I do not know why I went to school. Somebody comes to rip me off. I can't Google to know what do I need to do to prevent it. We need to rise up to prevent these exploitations by reporting accordingly. We have done it for some people. That's what we are doing now. People that don't even know how to do it, because there's a section of NEC Act that approves the consumer complaint handling mechanism, that a registered consumer NGO can file complaint on behalf of customers, provided there is a written authority for the consumer organization to do that. If we do not complain, we won't have enough data. And if you look at it, the things we are talking about are fake. The ones I have cited here are true stories. The people exist. I can bring them to the office tomorrow. If you say I should bring them. If we all understand that and begin to document, don't just go to them and talk to them and go home. Without submitting a document they will acknowledge for you. After 10 days and they don't act, take it up with NEC. Then let this go to NEC and say why they didn't respond to what you have complained about. But the more we keep quiet and relaxed, service delivery cannot improve. Because those who are exploiting you may not be at the top management level. There may be small staff who want to make some money to eat. Then they want to exploit you. And if you do not report, the higher cadre of management wouldn't know. They will think all is well. The people who do this not sit in air conditioning. The ones that collect all this money from us, most of them don't sit in an air-conditioned office. They are the ones out there. There was one in Buhari. If you see where they were operating from, when we now reported, they disappeared from there. But they were the ones putting trouble on the consumers in that area. So for me, we will be doing the disco good if we report and let us educate other people to always report. Because if we sell 1,000 complaints to disco in a week, they will know the issue. And don't forget, the federal government is paying the consumer forum staff. They have consumer forum offices that are taken care of by federal government through NEC. Last year, they treated only 2,000 cases. out of a population of 180 million Nigerians, that the household will be up to 100,000 households. You treated only 2,000 cases, and they were claiming that that was the complaints they got. Now, the more we don't give them complaint, they are being paid for not doing anything. So we need to complain enough so that we can keep them busy enough and get the discourse checkmated, not to keep doing what they are doing.
Very well said, actually. Is there anybody else that has any? Okay.
The explanation about AEDC not collecting payment for metering. You know, that is under the performance agreement. Under the performance agreement, they're supposed to provide, but there is a shortfall. And as of last year, there is the MAP regulations, whereby you have another provider for meters. And that provider will enter into an agreement with the DISCO and then supply the meter to the consumer. Now, under that regime, it is not free, because the DISCO, okay, there is two ways of payment. Either the consumer does not pay, and then he will now pay a service fee on that as he's paid for his electricity, and it is the DISCO that will collect it. And the other option is an outright payment. So that's the current thing that will now require, even by the regulations of NAC, for consumers to pay for their meters. And I think we need to really clarify what the true position is. Then the second issue on this is the issue of estimated billing. I think there is a current attempt by NAC to cap it, so that for certain households, the estimated billing will be within a certain cap, and there are methodologies that are being developed in that regard. I think these are current issues that the regulator is trying to do to intervene on some of these issues that we need to look at.
All right, thank you so much. Ms. Mano, do you want to take note of that? Oh, yes, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Ife Ugunamo. I work with Nextier Advisory. I do have a question. I understand the House of Reps, they have passed a bill seeking to criminalize estimated billing in the country. And now we have most of the DISCOs saying that less than 50%, or maybe I think Abuja DISCO has over 50% being metered. What is the impact of this bill? I want to know your honest opinion. Is the bill dead on arrival?
Please, do you have a way of assessing your maintenance staff? Because I live in a place where it takes only 3 minutes to drive from your maintenance office to my transformer. But I can assure you, if I have a fuse cut, it takes more than 24 hours. Unless if this is a service question I'm talking about. Because does it take cost-effective tariff to go and fix my That's the point. Thank you. And I'm coming from your dispatch record. You see, all they will do is they will tick them. They are all treated. But I can assure you, go back there, you will find that they are not treated. So you have to have a way of assessing them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Maybe we can have just 2 more, because I understand we're out of time.
My name is Abolo Mokwe from TCN. I feel that as an accountant, the 2 ways to increase your profit is to either increase your price or to reduce your losses, your costs. Now, MITO 2015 provides for ATC and C losses of 54%. Of 32%. But the World Bank study that I read shows that the DISCOs have, the power sector has a 54% ATC and C losses. Now I want to introduce my own, which is ATC, C and R. That's the remittance losses. If you look at what the DISCOs remit, then the ATC-CR losses in the country will be close to 70%. Now, which means that DISCOs are not reducing their costs. They just want to focus on increasing prices. This question is meant for the AEDC man. Because I looked at I checked the NEC website all the time. Most of the DISCOs have posted the 2017 audited financial statements. And I know that their collections
are high. Just like he said, in our days, it used to be, Abuja Disco used to be about 2 billion. It's about 5 and 7 billion now that he confirmed. Of course, because there was tariff increase of about 45% in 2015. So that accounts for that. But my point is that this higher collection has not been matched by higher remittance. The remittance is still low. And so my friends, I'm in TCN, so my friends are in market operators. I can tell you what Abuja Disco is remitting. Abuja is remitting about 2 billion. So where's the difference between 2 billion and 7 billion going? So it is not just Abuja Disco. This is happening all over the place. So what I'm saying is that there's no need for increase in tariff, because the discos they are already collecting the increased tariff by not remitting. So they just want to formalize it. They only want to formalize it. That's why they're asking for it. When you collect 7 billion and you remit 2 billion, then you only want to formalize the increased tariff. So that's my.
Thank you.
And to AEDC, please, I will love it if you, apart from all the things my neighbor said, I would love it if you look into the Lube unit, distribution unit, because apart from all they're doing, I can see that they are very, very rude, starting from the manager. In fact, you get into the office, the way they talk to you as if you're not a customer. So I think if there's a way you can restructure or send them out, we appreciate
MMP consumer base. In fact, that's why initially when I was looking at how the sector gets funded, ultimately either the consumer, the investor, or the government. All of these, the other two, government and investor, it still ends up being recovered in one form or the other through the tariff. The question I think that is different here was issue of do you charge directly for a person to get a meter? Ultimately, the cost of the meter, it gets recovered. You know, it might not have a specific line in your bill, but that's the basic.
The consumer bears the charge of the meters.
Yes, pays for all the lines, pays for the consumer pays for the infrastructure. That's where the investment comes from. Assessment of our maintenance responsiveness. One of the things that I touched on briefly in terms of the investments that AEDC has made is this commercial management system, which is just now being rolled out. One of the features in there is issue of tracking the performance on faults on the system itself. So there is an element there that would allow for and will allow for performance with respect to how soon a fault is dealt with, to allow management, senior management to track that. The comments from, I'd say, my colleague in the sector from TCN. I suppose if since you have looked at the numbers for AEDC, the audited numbers, you will see what the gross margin is. So we could talk of all the revenues that is collecting. What is the gross margin? And that tells you how much flexibility we would have with respect to cost control, because the money in a lot of months for a lot of discos, in fact for some discos it's every month, AEDC is in a bit of a privileged position there. We actually make a loss at the gross margin level. So we are not talking here of being able to go and tighten belts, cut stuff at the level that we are counting for the power that we have distributed in a month. We are at a loss. So I think if you look at those numbers fairly, finance man, you will agree with me that leaves us very little room for any efficiency gains with respect to what we can do. I have noted the comment of customer service, I actually do agree that is one aspect that we do need to be continuously working on, and you will find that AEDC, especially on issues where customers report fraud cases and things, you'll find that AEDC has had zero tolerance for that sort of behavior, and people involved in such have left the system immediately. So if you give us the benefit of a doubt, as I said, and make us aware of specific issues, one or the other, we will act to improve the situation slowly. It is something I appeal to, it is to everybody, to all our customers, it is something we've got to work on together. You will appreciate we have 3,000 employees, a lot of them are out in the fields, a lot of them are in places where, frankly, I do not visit probably in a year, if not. And I'm pretty sure even the MD and AEDC will have trouble touching all the places, all the points at which we interface with our customers. So we need to work together on that.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, audience. I think we only have a few minutes to wrap up. So, Mr. Corey, do you want to wrap up for a couple of minutes? What should the audience take away from this?
What the audience will take away, number one, thanks to Nextier Power for providing this opportunity for people to really ventilate their views and their challenges. Two, as a comrade, I want to thank everyone and encourage you, sincerely speaking, if we do not engage, we can't get anywhere. We must report things that are not proper. We should make NEC work. They are paid with taxpayers' money. We should make NEC work. If NEC work, AEDC will not be comfortable. They will do their job. What is happening is the relaxation of NEC. In fact, negligence on their part. I don't know whether there's a way in Nextier Power we get the federal government to really look at what NEC is doing, whether they are partial owners of the discos, why they are technically supporting them against Nigerians. That we need to establish. Finally, try and get this book and read it. It will be useful. It will be useful to you. I'm serious. It will be useful to you as a consumer. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, comrade. Mr. Patrick, do you want to round up?
I don't think I can match comrade, which is a closing remark, but I'm going to. Well, thank you very much for your passion and your concern for the industry. I just wanted to end with this. The question we started with was tariff and service delivery, which one comes first? And you said chicken and the egg, which one comes first? We eat both of them, chicken and egg, we eat them. So I think it's important for us to understand the level of complexity of the industry. To the discos, what I hear generally is, one, people don't trust the discos. They don't trust government. They don't trust NEC. They feel ripped off. So the bottom line is, why do they feel that? If we ask ourselves that simple question, why do they feel that way? Simply because they are paying for a commodity that they don't get. That's it. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. So next year, we need to move in the territory of bringing understanding between the different players. So they can sit down and communicate instead of talking over each other. What I see is that we have forums like this, people come and talk, but we need to have business development meetings between the operators and the regulators and whichever arm of the government is involved, so they can understand where the responsibilities and obligations are and work as partners to address my need as a consumer, your need as consumers. At the end of the day, we are all consumers. Now, the other issue that I think will help also is, and that's very important, loss reduction. Loss reduction is the key. If you reduce your losses, it increases your revenue. Your tariff may go up or stay the same, but when you reduce your losses, definitely. For example, your MDA debts, MDA's ministries, departments and their agencies, they're still going government. There should be an issue, there should be a situation where they must be made to pay their debt before the government can actually expect. Then enforcement. Enforcement is a partnership between you and
Right, thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for speaking from the NERC perspective. Do you have anything else to add?
I suppose I have spoken more than my fair share for the evening, but I'd like to thank Nextier first of all for this opportunity, and the audience. I guess next time I only accept going in if it's in Lagos where they're not my customers. but I very much appreciate the feedback I get from you, and I also realize the work we have to do in order to even get to this tariff versus quality of service discussion, because quality of service has to be paid for, but we need maybe to start working on what do we all agree on as the priorities that will measure as quality of service being improved.
Right, just to conclude, I just want to say thank you so much, Nextier, for putting this up. We have talked about this in different moods. We have been serious, we have laughed, we have complained. But the enormity and the seriousness of this issue can never be underestimated. Because at the end of it all, we are all consumers, right? And we all pay for these bills, and we're all affected one way or the other, like I said at the onset. The issue of cost-reflective tariff or service delivery, which comes first? I think it's unanimous, service delivery comes first. I think we all agreed about that, right? Pardon? Also, we're going to do the votes. All right, so maybe I was being too preemptive, but before, I'll just round up. The issues pertaining to cost-reflective tariff, like Mr. Emmanuel said, if we begin to, we have only just touched the surface on today's discussion. The number of hours we have could never sufficiently discuss or exhaust the issues. So we have touched it all, but I think that with the recording of this, I'm sure the key stakeholders would hear and will probably want to engage us a little bit more and see what can be done about it. You can never underestimate the power of the consumer and the effect of the consumer to change things. So please, just like Mr. Comrade Korea said, I think we should go ahead and truly document our complaints, right? I mean, posterity would speak for us. I think from NERC's perspective, the regulator must do its work. So we cannot stand on the fence and not know what to do, right? So we have to have economic models that are sustainable in the forum. We're just talking about legacy power projects. We haven't talked about new investors, which is probably where I'm interested as well. Because we started by talking about Tesla coming into the market. And the question is, why should the discos be edgy, right? I mean, so we have a new client coming on board. What does that mean for us? So that is another issue that needs to be looked into. We need to look into cost-reflective tariff, and like I said earlier, we need Ministry of Finance involved in this. And maybe we need to agree on the fact that electricity is an essential commodity. And if it's an essential commodity, we must elevate it from the normal way everything else is dealt with to an elevated list where government takes it as priority for the country. Once it's elevated to the point of priority for the country, the National Assembly bill will speak to it as such. So that issues such as Way Leave Bill, which address right of compensation to build power plants or to build transmission or distribution network, all of those will be taken care of as well. And there probably will be a cap on investors when it comes to FX rates for investors bringing in equipment into the country, because the equipment are imported anyway. So there are so many issues that need to be dealt with. And if there is a cap on that, maybe we'll come up with an economic model that is sustainable, that is beyond, you know, changing every 6 months, but to something that truly we can actually put our fingers on, and there'll be some level of predictability for investors that boost the economy of the country. So we cannot take every single sector and discuss it at length as we should, but I think we've all been able to learn something or glean something from all of the discussions today, and I'm sure we'll have another forum to actually progress this discussion and put forward our views to the necessary key holders. Thank you.
It's fantastic. A round of applause for the panelists. All right, so to wrap up, go to menti.com, that's M as in Mary, E as in Edward, N as in Nigeria, T as in time, I as in ink.com. The code is 629316. And it's just one simple question. Which should come first? Tariff increase or service delivery? All right, so the results are 92% of you believe that service delivery should come first. So it turns out that ADC, we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you for coming. It's an honor to host this event every month. This is the 32nd or 33rd Power Dialogue. We do this every third Wednesday of the month. The next one, I believe, is February 20th. We'll see you then. Thank you.